While working up in this area, I encountered a number of inconsistencies when comparing it to the schematic. I did a bit of research and I think I finally have a handle on it. Turns out there are multiple runs of this chassis with circuit differences between them. For example, in this schematic, we've got a resistor across the secondary of the transformer that drives the push-pull output tubes. On this version, no resistor, but we've now got a capacitor across the plates. And up in this area, if you recall, there were a number of dog bones that were kind of floating in space, and there were some in series, maybe some in parallel. Capacitor had broken off. In general, it looked pretty ugly. Well, what finally solved the riddle for me was finding these notes about production runs and recommended modifications. So, for example, that second note there, below run number 27, they recommend changing some resistor values. That is what this was. Instead of replacing the resistors, like say one was supposed to go from 490K to 1.5 mega ohm, they put a 1 mega ohm resistor in series, I believe, so there were two stuck up here. Well, I cleared all that out, and I put a 1.5 mega ohm and a 2 mega ohm, and I replaced the mica cap. Also replaced the mica cap up here, so that's all nice and squared away now. As for over here, that note is down there, below run number 22 at a 0.002 microfarad condenser across the plates of the pentodes. That would be the output tubes here. I've seen those capacitors in many other radios too, and you want to use a high voltage capacitor there. It's something to do with I think you get some kickback or something from this transformer. So I went with the 1600 volt orange drop in there. Now, one thing I have not encountered yet is this guy. If I look on the parts list, I think that's 57. If I can find it on here. Yeah, it says resistor 240K across volume control ends, not illustrated. And they mention it here too. And here it says below run number 25, place a 490K ohm resistor across two terminals of volume control. Well, my volume control is down in there, and there is no resistor across any outside terminals of it. So I'm not sure what to do. Plus, this is not the volume control. The volume control is way over here. So I don't know if the parts list numbering got out of whack or what's going on. All I do know is I have no resistor across the volume control in this radio, nor do I have this resistor. So I'm just going to go with it the way it is for the rest of the radio, and we'll see how it plays. If need be, I'll consult some other owners that might have a Type 15 chassis, and we can figure things out from there. Alright, I finally finished rebuilding all the Bakelite blocks and rebuilding these two metal box caps, and I've replaced all the out of spec resistors and even some mica caps that tested funky. Now for the fun part, the two electrolytics and this box down here that has I think 5 or 6 capacitors inside of it. The electrolytics have been replaced. I can tell not only because of the appearance up here, they're not Philco branded caps, but also you can see the wires have been spliced down in here with some old electrical tape. So I want to carefully unravel this tape, undo the connections, and then get these caps out. I think once the connections are undone, all I need to do is loosen some set screws and pop those guys right out. The can is going to be a little bit more work because I'm going to have to undo these connections, and I've got this big heavy cable coming through here. It's a nice neat job the way they wired this set in, but makes it a little bit trickier to work on. They've got a couple main cables running along both sides of the chassis where they've taken multiple cloth covered wires and then put them inside of the sleeve that runs all up through here, including all the way into the output cable to the speakers. A little bit unraveled here, but the wires inside look to be in good shape. And I hope I can reuse this cable, because if I want to splice some new cable in, well, it goes right into this nice sleeve here, so. And then some of them come out down here. I suppose you could pull them out and then try to thread new wire back up inside, but more likely I would end up just running a parallel to this cable. Also just noticed this one coming out here and then going to nowhere. Oh, I see, that's not a wire, that's just the outer sleeve kind of twisted up and pinched off. At any rate, so I'll take these two dog bone resistors out, which will free up a better view. And then I know there's a few wires that have to get unsoldered. And then I believe there are some sheet metal screws under the side of the chassis here. And then I can finally get that box out. I undid the electrical tape to reveal these two twisted up bundles of wires here. Each of these goes to one of the two filter caps down under there, and one of the other wires goes to either side of this block, which is this cap here, and it also goes to this filter choke. This is actually a fairly simple power supply because they do not use the field coils on the speaker for filter choke. So we have one capacitor, small cap on that Bakelite block, filter choke, then the other cap, and then it goes off into the radio. So I imagine originally there was a tie point at the bottom of each electrolytic cap, and that's where these wires went. These replacements don't have that, so they just left these kind of free floating, and I suppose I'll do the same. So I need to unsolder, for example, this wire here, and then here are the other two wires for each of the caps. That's this point right here. So unsolder these two wires, this wire, and this wire, and then I can pull those two caps out. I did some asking around online and found out what type of capacitors this set originally came with, and it turns out they were copper Mershon caps, which were the first widely used commercially available electrolytic capacitors. They're also very cool looking, and consequently a little expensive, if I can even find a pair. I posted a want to buy ad on the Philco forum and on the Antique Radio forum, and I do have a couple leads, so hopefully one of them pans out. If not, though, I got a suggestion to try rolling my own, and I don't think it would be all that difficult. If you recall, I did something like that when I made up an AC probe for my HP410C. Just went to the local home improvement center, to the plumbing section, and got some copper tubing and an end cap and so on. And I think I could rig up a reasonably decent looking replica copper Mershon cap. But we'll see how that pans out with the ad. Now, now that I've got these caps out, I can do something I've been putting off, which is to check this filter choke for continuity. It's attached to these two tie points on this capacitor here, so let's give it a try. Alright, so I'm on the R times 100 range, and we're just shy of 2, so let's call that about 190 ohms, which seems reasonable for a filter choke, so I think that's alright. Now, for the fun part, getting all these wires and these two resistors all disconnected so I can get this box unmounted. I disconnected all the wires below. Now I'm taking off the mounting screws, and hopefully this will lift right out. And there it is. So, oh, it's dirty. There's actually a part number on there. Let's see. It seems like I'm going to have to drill out these two rivets to get this open. And then I'll have to figure out how to reattach that bottom plate then. I'm hoping that's all it is those two rivets. And it's not something underneath these plates here. It doesn't look like it. A fellow restorer posted a comment in my restoration thread on the Philco forum in which she had a link to some photos of this type of capacitor in various stages of being rebuilt. And I noticed in his photos he did not drill out these rivets. It sure looked to me like he was able to just pull this bottom right off. So let's see if I can get that open. A flat-bladed screwdriver and a hammer. And I'll put the blade against the lip on that base there. Give it a few taps. See if it'll come off. Oh yeah, how about that? It is coming loose. Okay, I see there are little wires coming through these holes. I'm going to have to cut those and then solder them. It's kind of holding it on there. Oh, okay. I see there's actually some extra length on these wires. Boy, you said nasty rubber insulation like on my Philco 3930. So let's see, I guess I can just cut those wires off. And then, if my luck holds, I can just pull those insides out. Come on. Alright, I won't have to pull out a heat gun, I guess. Hold on this. Let's see. Alright, wish they were all that easy. Now I'll just clean up these old leads here and start mounting my new capacitors on. While it may not be a thing of beauty, it'll get the job done. In hindsight, it would have been nice if I had a bunch of caps like this with the leads coming out the end, but instead I just had these caps where they both come out on one side, and the leads weren't very long as well. So basically I stuck one end of each capacitor through the holes, wrapped the lead around and soldered it, and then I ran a little bus wire around for the common ground there. And now I can just pop it back in the can and remount it and carefully hook all the wires up. Took a lot of reference photos, and I hope I can figure out which each of these 6 wires goes to. I figured while I got this box cap disconnected, I better clean that area of the chassis, because once it's installed, you really can't get down in there. It also gave me a chance to repaint this transformer shell. Again, with this mounted, you just can't get at it very easily. And it turns out it actually comes apart very simply. 2 long screws, just took them both out, and a little bit of wiggling, and these popped right off. I've already put on 1 coat of this Rust-Oleum engine enamel, and I think they're looking quite good. Going to do a bit of light sanding and put on a 2nd coat, and I think that'll be it. And then I simply need to slide them back on, put the screws back down. As for the choke, just 2 wires I had to unsolder and 4 mounting screws, and that came right out. Just did a little bit of sanding on this, and I'm going to spray it with a coat of the engine enamel. And I did a little bit of polishing on this. You can only do so much because this is like some, I don't know that it's quite pot metal, but it's some type of cheap metal, I think made up of several types blended together. The brackets are steel, cadmium plated steel, but not the actual box itself. It's the same stuff they use on tube shields like these. Oh, if you spend enough time, like with a buffing wheel, you can get them to look kind of nice, but they will start corroding again. And if you really want to go crazy, I think you can get them chrome plated, but they weren't originally, I don't think, so I don't like to bother. I also started cleaning up the chassis a bit. It's got some rust here and there, but mostly it's just really dirty. What I've been doing to quickly take care of all that is just use the same old Rust-Oleum liquid rust stripper and just brush it on 1 small section at a time and wipe it down. It'll not only get rid of the rust, but it also loosens up the dirt really well and cleans up the cadmium. Just be sure to clean off all the residue. And it's not a bad idea to rub down a little bit of WD-40 or some type of light machine oil after you're done. Otherwise it will start corroding and hazing again like it's done here where I left off. I'm not going to do the entire chassis right now though. I just really wanted to do this end while I've got the opportunity. I'll do the rest of this later on. For example, at some point I want to remove this entire tuning capacitor assembly because the mounts are all routed and rock hard. This is supposed to be rubber here, and there are several more mounts underneath. With them being rotted and shrunk like that, the whole thing is pretty loose now. But I want to make sure that this thing's actually working before I get to those lengths. I'll have to unsolder a bunch of wires and carefully undo some screws and so on, and then try to track down some suitable replacements for these. No sense in doing all that if I can't actually get it to work.